Hey everyone, so I'm Allie and I am back finally with a new bookish video, and I'm so excited to be back to film more bookish content in the year of 2019. So this video is going to be a little bit of a recap of all of my favorite books of 2018, but I'm going to have a top 10 and then I'm going to have some honorable mentions at the very end of the video. So stay tuned to the very end to see all of the books that I loved in 2018. So actually, unlike last year, this video is going to be in order from 10 to 1. So I'm going to go with my 10th favorite book of the year, and that is this one, Grace and the Fever by Zan Romanoff. So I chose this one to go into my favorites list of 2018, mostly because it sparked my love of this kind of subgenre about boy bands. So Grace and the Fever follows Grace, who is obsessed with this boy band, and she ends up meeting one of the members of that boy band serendipitously in her neighborhood, and they kind of hit it off. He doesn't really know that she loves this boy band, and they kind of just have this little conversation that ends up being publicized by the paparazzi, and everything just kind of explodes from there. It's a really, really interesting story. The way that I describe it is basically if you can imagine fan fiction about like One Direction or the Jonas Brothers, but in a more polished and YA setting. So if you were obsessed with boy bands back in the day, or even right now, anything like Jonas Brothers, One Direction, 5 Seconds of Summer, any sort of boy band, you're going to absolutely love this book. It is so, so good. I did rate it a 4 out of 5 stars, but it is one of my favorites. The only reason I did rate it a 4 out of 5 stars is because of a certain plot point that happens within the novel. And basically it's sort of a Louis and Harry sort of thing. Like if you know anything about the One Direction fandom, it's sort of a Larry sort of situation, and I didn't exactly like the way that the main character went about it, but she did get her comeuppance at the end, so I did feel like it was kind of redeemed, but it still kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, so I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars. But if it weren't for that, it would have definitely been a 5 out of 5. And I feel like the reason that I want to put this in my favorites list is because this book has stuck with me for so long, ever since I've read it, and it really got me into more of the boy band genre or subgenre. And I did read Kill the Boy Band because of this book, and I also have another boy band book called Reunited. So I'm kind of into this like boy band contemporary subgenre, and this book is exactly what sparked it, and it was so amazing. I 100% recommend it. The next book on this list is Bruja by Zoraida Cordova, and I absolutely loved this book and this series in general this year. This book in particular was my favorite one out of the series so far. The third book isn't out yet, but I have read Labyrinth Lost and Bruja, and this one was definitely my favorite out of the two, and I absolutely loved getting to follow the older sister in this 3-sister little family group. And I'm also an older sister, so I felt like I could relate to this character a little bit more than Alex, who is a middle sister. So this book follows Lula, and this is after the events in Labyrinth Lost, so I don't really want to give too much away and talk too much about this book, but it also has to do with zombies, which I really found interesting. And it's kind of funny because I'm not really a zombie sort of person. It's not really my kind of like genre of horror or whatever you would call that, but I actually really enjoyed this book, and I thought it was really done well in this one, and I loved Lula as a character, and I love all the different conflicts that happened in this book, and I absolutely love this series mostly because it circles so heavily around family, and I feel like that's a really important thing, especially in Latinx communities, which this is about a Latinx family, and I really loved the representation, and I really felt seen by this book, and I feel like Zoraida did such an amazing job at illustrating what it's like to be in a Latinx family. The next book on this list is kind of a surprise, especially to me. I didn't expect to enjoy this book as much as I did, especially going into it. I kind of bought it because I liked the cover and it had a lot of hype around it, but I'm like, it'll be an okay book. I'm guessing it'll be like a 3 or 4 stars. I'm not gonna like love it, but whatever. And that is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw, and I absolutely loved this book so much more than I could have ever expected expected to love this book. So basically this book is about Penny, and she lives in a very small town, and in this town there's a legend that these three sisters were murdered because they were witches, and ever since then they have come back and invaded the bodies of three girls in this small town and have killed boys up until, I'm pretty sure, the winter solstice or something like that. And I absolutely love this book. I loved Penny. I loved the getting to know the three sisters. I felt like that story was really well woven in through the overarching story. I thought that that was really well done, and I actually really enjoyed the romance. I've heard a lot of people criticizing the romance, and I totally think that's valid. It's not for everyone, but I really loved this romance, and I was completely shattered by the end of this book. I was crying. I did not expect to. It was just, this book pulled out emotions in me that I didn't even realize I had about this book. Like, just the ending was so absolutely incredible to me. I feel like this is a book where you either really love it or you really hate it. It's such a polarizing book, and I feel like that's because of the way that it was written, the way that the characters develop, the way that the characters were written in general, and it's definitely a book where I can see why people dislike it, but the reasons people dislike it are pretty much the reasons why I love it. It's just such a beautiful book. The writing is gorgeous and lush, and I want to live in this book. It is just so atmospheric. I want to live here. The rain, the mist, the ocean, everything about it, it just gave me chills and really made me want to live wherever Penny lives. It's beautiful. It's so aesthetic. If you can say that a book is aesthetic, if you could say that the writing is aesthetic, it would be this book. This is aesthetic writing. The next one is also kind of a polarizing book as well, and one that I actually knew that I was going to love going into, and I was so excited. And I actually didn't even know that it was coming out. I didn't even know it was a thing until like basically the day that it came out, and I'm like, what? This is a thing? Like, oh my gosh. And that is Annalie in Real Life by Janelle Milanes. And this book follows Annalie and her newly blended family. Her dad is going to get married to his girlfriend, and Annalie's mother has been dead for a little while, and she's just trying to adjust to having these new people in her house and trying to create a sense of family after her mother has passed. Annalie is also really into this video game, and she has a crush on the guy that she plays this video game with. She's never met him in real life, but she has met him through this video game and through, I'm guessing, sort of like an Xbox Live situation. And I'm not really a gamer, so I don't really know any of this like terminology or anything, but I really enjoyed this book. This book ends up not really being a lot about the gaming or a lot about even the guy that she likes, but there is this really awesome like fake dating trope, which is done really well, at least in my opinion. And I absolutely loved the way that this story developed. And I loved the characters. I loved Annalie so much. I just loved her voice, and I actually read this book in one day, in one sitting. I think I started this book at like 7 p.m. and I ended it at like maybe 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I just absolutely loved it. I flew through it. I was so obsessed. I could not put it down, like, for anything. I literally took this with me everywhere in the house where I was that night, and it was just so good. And I know that a lot of people don't like it, or just some people don't like it, and I totally understand why they don't like it. But I feel like the reasons why they don't like it are the reasons I like it. It feels so much more realistic to me than a lot of other contemporaries do, and that's mostly because the ending isn't necessarily a happy ending, and it's not really wrapped up in a pretty little package. And I don't want to give any spoilers away about the ending, but it's definitely not like a quintessential, obvious, happy ending that a lot of other contemporaries have that are YA. It was definitely more realistic. And I feel like because real life doesn't really make narrative sense, this book, because it is so much like real life, also didn't really make narrative sense. And I feel like that's why people didn't like it, but that's also the reason I loved it. I loved that this mirrored real life so perfectly to the point where it really didn't make narrative sense. And there were some parts where I'm like, wait, why didn't this happen? Why didn't this happen? Like, this is supposed to happen in a narrative, in fiction, that's how it's supposed to go. But I feel like this book really broke down those barriers of fiction and of narratives, and that's definitely why I liked it so much. And I could probably talk about this book literally forever because it's just one of my favorites, and that's why it's on this list. But I definitely recommend it if you're looking for a contemporary that kind of breaks the rules of fiction and breaks the rules of making narrative sense. Then this is definitely kind of the contemporary for you. And yes, I definitely recommend it. If you want a fake dating trope, this is like peak fake dating trope next to All the Boys I Loved Before. I have so many polarizing books in this list. I'm just like, this was the year of me reading books and loving them that a lot of other people just didn't like, and I think that's great. I think that that's like a really fun thing. So my fifth favorite book of the year is Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli, and oh, look at this book, it's just so beautiful. I love this cover, and I absolutely loved Leah. I loved the story. I loved getting to read about a bisexual character, and I loved how complex and not perfect Leah was. I feel like a lot of times we put so much pressure on young adult contemporary leads to be perfect, especially our female leads to be 100% perfect and non-problematic or whatever, and we don't really give room to be messy or anything like that. And I loved Leah because she was super messy, and I loved all these characters because they're all super messy, and I feel like that kind of got, you know, just lost in the conversation that was surrounding this book, that it wasn't just Leah that was messy. A lot of the other characters were messy too, and just as messy as she was, and no one really kind of resolved any of their messiness. But I think that that's kind of realistic, and I think that's what I like about these contemporaries that I've been reading, is that I want them to be more realistic and more true to life rather than picture perfect, 100% non-problematic, whatever. And I think that there's a difference between being like really problematic and like, yeah, this is an issue, and then just being realistic, you know? And I really liked that Leah had her really, really positive moments, and then she had kind of her really negative moments, that it wasn't just all one or the other. She was a complex character who went through complex things and had complex emotions, and I really loved that about her. And I also really liked the main like couple, which is like something a lot of people didn't like, and I think I talked about this in the video that I made about this book, which I will link down below. I promise to link it down below, and sometimes I don't, but yes. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about it. I know I'm going on forever, but I really enjoyed this book. If you want to know more about my thoughts, go watch that video, go read my Goodreads review. I talk about it in length, in detail, so go ahead and check this book out, check out my videos. If you're on the fence about it, I say go for it. I really enjoyed it. The next book is another one that I did not expect to love and enjoy as much as I did, and it is now a very near and dear book to my heart, and that is The Young Elites by Marie Lu. Basically, The Young Elites is a villain origin story, and it's kind of dystopian, fantasy-esque, and it was just so good and beautiful and atmospheric, and I want to also live in this world, which is so weird. It's definitely not the kind of world that I think I would thrive in, but if I was this main character, oh my gosh, I was so angry for her. Like literally on her behalf, I was angry for this character because she was so poorly treated, and there were so many misunderstandings that like could not be like explained, that I was so angry when everyone was just so against her, like right off the bat was against her, and her life was basically stacked up to be just like not, it wasn't gonna work for her. Nothing was ever gonna work for her, and it just made me so frustrated and angry, but it was in a good way because I knew that it was going to like turn her into a villain, and I love villain origin stories. I think that's why I like And I Darken. This is definitely in that same vein. It's a little less so compared to And I Darken. It's a little bit different, a little bit toned down, but it's still amazing, and I like can't imagine why people don't talk about this book more. Like, I feel like no one ever talks about this book. Maybe they did when it first came out or when it was like a newer thing, but I never hear anybody talk about it anymore. And it's literally like my favorite book. I love this one, and she's such like an unlikable character, but I ended up really loving her, and it's just so good. Basically, it's about this girl, and she's from a really abusive family, and so definitely trigger warnings for abuse. And she has a younger sister, and this main character is always trying to protect her younger sister, and she's kind of like a screw up because she doesn't have powers. And this was just so wonderful and so amazing, and I need to read the sequel so bad. I've heard that it goes down through the series, that it's just not as good as the first book, but I have really high hopes, and I'm really hoping that I'm going to love this series because I absolutely love this first book. It was so well done. Marie Lu is one of my new favorite authors. I read Warcross in 2017 and then this book in 2018, and I'm just really loving her books. Like, I did not think I was gonna like them because I thought, for some reason I thought that she's like a dystopian author, and I'm not really into dystopian anymore, but like this was so good. Like, wow, I'm in love with it. The next book is one that I've literally heard no one talk about in the year of 2018. Like, almost no one. Like, I literally cannot remember if anyone actually talked about this book except for me, and that is Bring Me Their Hearts by Sarah Wolf. And literally, this is one of the best fantasies that I read in 2018, and it went so far under the radar, and I'm so confused as to why. I wonder if it's because of the cover. The cover's not like the best thing in the world, but honestly, this freaking book, I have not stopped thinking about this book ever since I read it. Like, literally, it has been in my mind, in my brain. I need a sequel, like literally yesterday. I need one so bad. And this book, y'all, you guys are just you're sleeping on this book. I'm so sorry, but you are. And it's so good, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters, I loved the story, the plot, everything. It was so good, and the magic system was so interesting, and there's witches, and there's princes, and it's just so awesome. It's such a good fantasy. Basically, this book is about Zara, and she is a heartless, which means that she's basically dead, and she doesn't have a heart, and her heart is with a witch, and that witch kind of controls her in a way, and she ends up being told that she has to go and woo the prince and make him fall in love with her, and then she has to steal his heart, and then she will get her heart back and become a normal human girl again. So if you're looking for a new fantasy, especially one that has gone under the radar and isn't really hyped up a lot, this is definitely a book for you. I totally recommend it, and I really want more people to read it, so please go pick it up. It is so amazing. Because I'm so bad at counting, this is actually the third book on this list, and that is The Diviners by Libba Bray. And I can't believe that this is actually on one of my favorites list. I never thought that I would actually get back to this book, because I had started this book quite a few years ago, and I had started it on audiobook, and for some reason I never finished it, even though I got pretty far into it. Like, I actually read quite a lot of this book on audiobook, but then I just never finished it for some reason. I don't know why. Don't ask me. I can't tell you. But then I ended up picking this book up at the Planned Parenthood book sale in my city, and I just could not pass it up. I saw this and I immediately grabbed it. I loved it, and I love this cover. It's the original cover. It has a beautiful cover on the inside of the dust jacket, and I just absolutely love this book. I did start it again on audiobook, I think maybe a year ago, and then I still didn't finish it. Finally, this year, I finished this book, and I actually have Layer of Dreams up on my shelf right there, and I'm so excited to get into this series, and I know everyone loves it, everyone raves about it, and I really wanted to see what the hype was about. I really wanted to finish this, and I'm so glad I did. This was one of my goals of this year, and I just love it so much, and the characters are amazing. I love every single one of them, and the story was so good, and I don't know, it's just so good. It combines two of my favorite loves, which are historical fiction and true crime, and puts it into one book, and it's The Diviners, and it's gorgeous, and I loved this book so much. I just could not believe that I hadn't finished this book when I started reading it like forever ago. Like, what was I waiting for? What was I doing? I honestly don't know, but I'm so glad I finished it, and I cannot wait to get to Lair of Dreams ASAP this year. It's gonna be probably in my February TBR, I think, or my March TBR, but it's going to be before my birthday. Like, I'm going to read it before my birthday so then I can pick up Before the Devil Breaks You. I almost forgot the title of that book, but yeah. Just love this book, so good. And the second book on this list is kind of more of a series, but I'm only going to be showing the last book in this series. And I think if you have followed me on Twitter, you might know exactly the book that I'm talking about, and that is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. Another book that I never in a million years thought would ever be on a favorites video of mine. It's here. It's live, it's real life, we are here, we are in this bee, we are getting this bread, and by bread I mean Clockwork Princess, and oh my gosh, this book, I was sobbing literally multiple times within this book, like actual sobbing, like ugly crying. It was absolutely amazing. I love these characters more than life itself. I love these characters. I would give my left kidney for any of these characters. Tessa, Jem, Will, all amazing. This is literally peak love triangle. Like, y'all were right. You guys did not steer me wrong. This is peak love triangle. This is what I want. I want more love triangles. Like, give me the good love triangles. I love them. And this ending though, this ending was just so amazing. Like, I could talk about this book forever. I think I'm going to do a series review because I literally cannot stop thinking about it. I can't stop like talking about it to myself and Twitter, and I love Jem. Jem is like my soft boy. He is just amazing. He's so sweet and kind and gentle and smart, and I love him so much. And yes, so this is amazing. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's here. It's real. It's yes. And my favorite book of 2018, I don't have a physical copy of because I listened to it on Audible, and that is, drumroll, Becoming by Michelle Obama. That was my all-time favorite book of 2018. Number one, it's Michelle Obama with Becoming. It was such an amazing audiobook, literally incredible. I urge you to please read this book. It is so good. It's so necessary to read this book, especially the audiobook. The audiobook was literally amazing. And I loved this book. The amount of times I cried while listening to this book are just innumerable. Just so many times. I cried so much, especially I think listening to her tell her own story was what made this book so special to me, and getting to hear her voice and getting to hear her story from literally basically the moment she was born to right now, and it is just wow. Like, I didn't know anything about Michelle Obama going into this book, and I learned so much about her, and I learned so much about her personality and the kind of person she is, and I really, really enjoyed getting to know her. And I just feel like this is a book that everyone needs to read. I want everyone to read this book. It was so beautiful and so well done, and wow, just, it was a really good book. I have to say it. I really do. It was peak literature. I absolutely loved it. She's a fantastic writer. She really did a good job at telling her own story, and I would read multiple books written by her if she put them out. Like, I would read any book by her. Okay, so those were my top 10 books, and now I'm going to get into all of my honorable mentions, which I'm just going to list off from Goodreads. Trusty dusty laptop. Actually, that's not the saying. Trusty dusty? That doesn't make any sense. Whatever. I literally make no sense ever. Let's get into this bee. Cloaked in Shadow by Ben Alderson. Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray. Bloodline by Claudia Gray. Caraval by Stephanie Garber. Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova. Bright We Burn by Kirsten White. Literally one of my favorite books of the year. I didn't include it to my top 10, mostly because I wanted to include books that I hadn't really read any of the series before 2018. I wanted it to be fresh books that I probably don't talk about a lot, but I really love. So that's why Bright We Burn isn't on there. That's why Restore Me isn't on there, but they're both honorable mentions. Restore Me by Tahada Mafi. Soft in the Middle by Shelby Eileen. That is a poetry collection. It is fantastic. I recommend you pick it up right now. Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kahn. A Study in Charlotte, The Last of August, and The Case for Jamie, all by Brittany Cavallaro. I really wanted to put those in my top 10. It just didn't make it. I don't know why. I just had so many other books that I wanted to talk about, and I just couldn't fit it in there. I really wanted to, though. It's definitely one of my all-time favorites, and I cannot wait for A Question of Holmes. It's just gonna be so good. Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch. Oh, that book was so good. It's like Mamma Mia, but set in Italy. It's really good. Like Water by Rebecca Potos, Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson, The Girl at Midnight by Melissa Gray, Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. Literally such an amazing book. I absolutely loved it. I don't know if I would call it a favorite of the year, but it's definitely, I really enjoyed it. I didn't put it in my top 10 because I read the other books in 2017, so yeah. Kill the Boy Band by Goldie Moldovsky, Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely loved that book. Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare, The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. It was so amazing. Such a good book. I absolutely loved it. Listened to it on audiobook. It was perfection. And that is it. Those are all of my favorite books from 2018. Those are all my honorable mentions. Okay, so those were all of the books that I loved in 2018. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, in the comments down below, let me know some of your favorite 2018 reads, and also let me know your feelings about the books that I mentioned in this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!